Regina Sisulu, whose name is, you might have seen it clearly emboldened on the road between here and O.R. Tambo, if you might have seen that. They are two giants of our struggle who dedicated their lives to the freedom of our people. So we have dedicated the whole year to celebrating their lives, their contribution to our struggle. And in the course of that struggle, they were greatly inspired by one of your great leaders, President Kwame Nkrumah. President Kwame Nkrumah was, in our view as South Africans, a greatly inspirational leader. And his words when Ghana became the first country to be independent still ring true today, when he said that the independence of Ghana is meaningless without the true independence of the rest of the African continent. And that for us was greatly inspiring, and it propelled us to seek our own freedom and independence. So we see Ghana in the highest esteem. Ghana is not only a country where we have our brothers and sisters, but it's a country that we've always held up high. And we're truly delighted that you found time to come for this state visit. Now, our common desire for the African continent was clearly set out by our esteemed Kwame Nkrumah, and it is a desire to have a peaceful, a united, and a democratic and prosperous Africa, and that in itself is what continues to drive us to have an Africa that we want, and an Africa that we can all be proud of. And we also welcome the advances that our continent has made, and in this regard I applaud you, President, as well as a number of other African leaders for having steered our continent towards resolving quite a number of challenges that our continent faces. You are counted amongst those leaders who have been seeking to steer our continent in the way of economic development, in the way of integration, the resolution of conflicts. And earlier in our discussion, I gave applause to you amongst the leaders in ECOWAS who were able to demonstrate to the African continent and to us, particularly in SADC, that when a region of our continent acts together, as you did when our sister country, the Gambia, was going through challenging times, you were able to demonstrate that when we act together to secure democracy and to secure the safety of our people, we are able to achieve success. Recently, you were amongst those who led us to sign up to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and we looked with great pride when Ghana was amongst those that signed up to it, and we have followed suit. We also, at the recent African Union Summit, as you saw, signed up to this, and we are very pleased and proud that countries such as Ghana have been showing the lead in a number of areas. South Africa and Ghana have a long-standing relationship dating back to the years of our struggle. And today, throughout the day, we will want to have a moment to thank you. So don't get tired, because we're going to be repeating this often. The role that Ghana played in helping us as South Africa to get where we are. So we pay tribute, we give due thanks to Ghana for the great support that it gave us as South Africa. You were not only inspirational in the way that your great leader Kwame Nkrumah inspired the continent, but you also gave practical support and assistance to get us to where we are. So we are eternally grateful. A number of South Africans were able to come to Ghana to seek refuge. Ghana was amongst those countries that never held back from voicing its very strong views about the evil system that operated in this country. So President, apart from discussing a whole range of other things, both economic, social, that impact on the lives of people, we are also going to be thanking you for what you have done. Your coming here gives us a great opportunity, so I conclude, to advance our friendship, advance our ties, and we would like to see those ties being consolidated around economic development for our two countries, so that our peoples should also know that Ghana and South Africa is linked at the hip, and we're joined at the hip, and we're countries that want to advance the interests of all our peoples economically, socially, and otherwise. So President, we thank you for coming here, and we're truly honored. So, thank you very much.
Well, it's a great honor for me that you invited me to pay this visit to South Africa. And frankly, when the invitation came, of course, automatically I accepted, but I was not aware at the time that I was the first president, head of state, to pay a state visit during your time as president of South Africa. It's an honor that I can never ever overcome. I'm really very grateful. I'm deeply honored. The Ghanaian people, they'll know it today, that they'll be very deeply touched by it. I think it is in order. You recited the historical relationship, the commitment on both sides to work for this new Africa, free of foreign domination, and will allow us to develop ourselves on an independent basis. The movement and the leadership that was given in the early years of the struggle by Kwame Nkrumah, our first president, reflected the consensus that there was in Ghana about the need for us to take this forward road in the liberation of our continent. We believe that the fact that Ghanaian nationalism has evolved so rapidly to allow us to be able to gain our independence is the first in sub-Saharan Africa, imposed an obligation on us to work for others who will continue to be under colonial and apartheid rule. And he gave expression to the feeling of our people in this fight. So it came about that lots and many people, generations of South Africans who came to our country at the time and were welcomed with open arms because we saw that their struggle was our struggle. And we continue still to have this perspective. There is common important bonds, historical as well as contemporary, with the waters. And that requires that we work together in the interest of our people. And that, more than anything else, is what is important. I have to thank you again, your government, for honoring me with the invitation to deliver the centenary memorial lecture in Accra, to honor this man, for me, the greatest of all Africans, Nelson Mandela. It's yet another feather in my cap given to me by South Africa, and I'm highly appreciative. And I told the High Commissioner when she brought the invitation that this is something that I will always always treasure. I hope I'll do justice to the topic when I speak. Mr. President, I've heard a couple of things here, which have always have gone to reinforce my sentiments of solidarity, and that is the desire on your part that we transform the Permanent Commission for Cooperation into a bi-national commission, which will be directly led by us as the two heads of state. I mean, this is a huge signal that we're giving about our understanding of the need for a strategic partnership between your country and mine. There are new vistas opening up for Africa to promote intra-African trade. Unfortunately, our continent has been the continent that has the least level of intra-African trade compared to the other continents of the world, and is one of the reasons for our continuing poverty. So if today the platform is being created for us to enhance trade amongst ourselves, and then a strategic partnership between South Africa, who is the dominant economy in the southern part, in fact, in the continent, and we, the gateway to the Western markets, the Western African markets, is one that makes a great deal of sense. We were all very, very happy in Nouakchott a few days ago when we signed the Continental Free Trade Agreement on behalf of South Africa. Because remember, Africa's most important economy was now fully behind the process for bringing the common market into being. And it's something that is going to be very much to your credit. It has its challenges for all of us. But I think the final goal of promoting the economic growth of our countries and thereby heightening the prospects of prosperity amongst us is so considerable that we have to grab it with both hands. There are many areas of mutual interest that we've come with. The delegation that is in front of you tells you about the diversity of interests that we want to promote with South Africa. And we're hoping that at the end of this meeting, of this visit, we will have a series of understandings, agreements about the future in these various diverse areas. Already, South African companies are prevalent in the Ghanaian economy. We have also quite a few people here working here over 2 years this year. I think that intercourse is one that we need to consciously develop. And this binational commission that you're proposing becomes a very effective vehicle and tool for promoting these wide interests. So we are very, very happy to be here. We're hoping that this visit will be good. We remember in 1996 giving you the possibility of winning the tournament. We quietly laid down for you. It was in the semi-final, I think, to pave the way for you. But it's all in the interest of our common solidarity. To look at things that way. So, the ongoing, I believe the preparations are going for the commission and for its transformations as well. I'm particularly interested in that, and for us to agree on where we will hold it so that we can give impetus to the understandings of where we should. But I once again want to thank you very much for the honor you've done me and my country, inviting us to pay this state visit. And we're hoping for big things coming. Thank you very much. And the rest of
Because I see there's two there.
Yes. And the handshake. And the handshake. Yes, Mr. President.
This lady's coming, Joy.
Let's go down.
Just monitor, please. Just monitor.
Izobe siyamthula uyiswitch on, ne?
Ladies and gentlemen, if we could settle down and then we'll start our proceedings. Watching Pretoria.
No, but yeah, I'm going to have a hello. I want to tell you. Okay. So, well, not really. Yeah, no, so concept. Is DMF still doing it? It's not, can we guess the minute? Could you put it in the bike? Yeah, but it's a guess. It's a guess, Swami. It's a guess because based on what's happening. So, I'm going to go for as soon as we need to meet. No, you're going to go.
Mama? I said, I'm just waiting for someone to Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please all rise to welcome their excellencies. As they enter. May I please request those who have phones on, if you could put them on silent, to switch them off, please. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Ministers, deputy ministers, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, thank you very much, and welcome to this press briefing on the state visit of the Republic of Ghana to the Republic of South Africa. I'd like to invite His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to deliver his remarks.
Well, thank you very much, Kusela, Diko, Your Excellency President Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, Honorable Ministers and Your Excellencies and High Commissioners and all dignitaries. Let me begin by extending once more a very word of welcome, very warm word of welcome to President Akufo-Addo and his delegation to South Africa. This, in many ways, is a truly historic visit. It is the first state visit to South Africa during my tenure as President of the Republic of South Africa. So it demonstrates the high esteem that we have for Ghana, President Akufo-Addo, and the people of Ghana by having invited the Honorable President to be the very first visitor to our country at the state level. President, your visit here is a moment that presents a great opportunity for us as South Africa to renew our bonds of friendship that were created many, many years ago. I've just been able to express how these bonds of friendship started years ago and how we were hugely inspired by the role that Ghana played in the course of our struggle and how we were also hugely inspired by the iconic leader of the people of Ghana, President Kwame Nkrumah. We've just had a wonderful meeting with President Akufo-Addo. The bilateral discussions that we have had have been characterized by a renewed commitment to forge closer partnerships and to deepen our bilateral cooperation. During our talks, we reviewed a wide range of issues of a bilateral and continental as well as a global nature. We noted with great satisfaction the fact that there exists between our two countries a number of agreements and memoranda that we have entered into in the past. These agreements cover a wide range of fields that touch on trade, that touch on investment, that touch on science and technology. We've also been able to look at the cooperation with regard to defense, to energy, transport, the environment, arts and culture, and tourism. We have recognized that these agreements are at a different stage or different stages of implementation. We further noted that a number of these agreements are also still in the course of being negotiated. We, as the two presidents, have directed our ministers to ensure full conclusion of these agreements and also to make sure that they are implemented so that they can be signed as legal instruments to solidify the mutual cooperation between our two respective countries. We also directed ministers to finalize negotiations in a number of other interesting areas. We are determined to forge a strategic partnership between our two countries, and this is informed by, as I said, the historical ties between our two nations. We also decided that we are going to elevate the joint cooperation system that we have had between the two nations to a bilateral commission which will be headed by the two presidents, and that is going to add a great deal of focus as well as momentum, and it will add an impetus of ensuring that the agreements that were arrived at in the past and those that are being negotiated now are finally and fully implemented. In our official talks, we noted the increased economic cooperation and trade between our two countries. We noted with appreciation the ever-increasing presence of South African companies in Ghana, and also noticed the increased level of investments in the Ghanaian economy by South African companies. In our efforts to increase economic cooperation, a joint business forum has been organized comprising of business delegations from both countries, and this forum is getting underway this afternoon. We will, as the two presidents, address the business people, that forum, and encourage them to take advantage of the conducive investment environment that exists in our two countries, an environment that is supported by the level of cooperation that we have and the agreements that we have reached. And as governments, we have committed ourselves to further improving the ease of doing business in the two countries. We could not complete our official talks without discussing regional, continental, and international matters. In this regard, we noted with concern the continued instability and conflict in some parts of the continent. We have reaffirmed our commitment to working together in pursuit of peace and stability and development in our continent, Africa. We have welcomed the strides that are being made by AU member states to advance continental integration. And in this regard, we were particularly grateful for the fact that the AU leaders, having signed in Kigali the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, finding that a number of other countries are also following suit. And in this regard, we've taken leaf from the leadership that has been shown by Ghana, and South Africa signed the Continental Free Trade Agreement in Nouakchott in Mauritania. So South Africa has joined the ranks of Ghana and a number of other countries by acceding to the Continental Free Trade Agreement. We urge fellow AU members to ensure that this important agreement is signed and ratified within the shortest period of time. On the international front, we've also affirmed our common view on the need to promote multilateralism and South-South cooperation. We have reiterated our call for the reform of the global system of governance and have called upon it to be more equitable and representative of all the regions of the world. In this regard, we're calling for the UN reform process to truly get underway. In conclusion, we reaffirmed the importance of historical relations and further committed ourselves to working even closer together to enhance political, economic, and social cooperation. So, Your Excellency, President Akufo-Addo, we as South Africans welcome you here with open arms. We are highly honored by your visit to our shores, and we want to assure you that Ghana and South Africa will continue to enhance the wonderful relations that we consolidated today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Your Excellency, President Akufo-Addo, may I invite you to deliver your remarks? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed. President Ramaphosa, members of the South African government, members of the Ghanaian delegation, ladies and gentlemen, I think President Ramaphosa has given a very thorough overview of where we are and what we have been discussing. I just want to add one or two things. First of all, to express my deep appreciation and the appreciation of the Ghanaian people for this honor that has been done us and myself by being the first president to pay a state visit to South Africa during the era of President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa. It's going to be a very important era in the life of South Africa, I have no doubt. That I'm the first here is something that is definitely going to be part of my CV.
Mine as well.
I do appreciate it. And also to express my appreciation for the honor that was done me by being invited to deliver the Centenary Memorial Lecture in Accra, commemorating the life of the great man, Nelson Mandela. The High Commissioner invited me to do that. So on the 18th of July, I'll be doing so. And that is yet another big honor that the South African people are bestowing on me. And I appreciate it very much. I think that to reinforce what President Ramaphosa has said, the need for close collaboration between our two countries who are working for common purposes on the African continent, to ensure the development of our continent, to ensure that we are masters of our own destiny, that we're going to build an Africa free of foreign control, free of foreign domination, which can respond to the aspirations of our people. That is the big challenge that is confronting the leadership of our nations at this point in our history. And for me, I welcome very much the opportunity to work with a man like President Ramaphosa in furtherance of this big goal. Our continent has everything, and yet we're the poorest on the people on the face of the globe. That anomaly can no longer continue, and it is because countries under responsible leadership like Ghana and South Africa commit themselves to working together, collaborating over broad areas of mutual interest, that we can advance to that goal. So we're here with a very, very broad-based delegation. We have ministers of finance, national security, agriculture, defense, science and technology, energy, agriculture. All of them are here to be able to engage with their South African counterparts, to find instruments and avenues for developing this mutuality in our two developments. We're there in West Africa. It's a gateway to a market of some 350 million people. Just as you're here, it's a dominant economy of Southern Africa, in fact, on the continent. Believe that a strategic partnership, which President Ramaphosa is talking about between our two countries, is a very important tool for advancing the interests of our people. So I came here to renew the friendship, to renew the sense of solidarity and cooperation that is between the two of us. Ghana had the great responsibility at the beginning of the decolonization process of taking the lead, because we were the first to be free, and our leader then, Kwame Nkrumah, was very insistent that we had a responsibility to the rest of the continent in speaking out and advancing the cause of freedom. And it is a matter of pride for all Ghanaians that we were able to play this role. And in the process, there are many South Africans who came to our country and established connections that last up till today. We want those connections to be even more heightened in this 21st century, so that the mutuality, the advantages that there are in this cooperation can bring about a more prosperous and more progressive South Africa, a more prosperous and more progressive Ghana. We agree on all the fundamental issues of economic growth, regional security, global governance, support very strongly the reform that is taking place with the African Union to make it a tool fit for purpose in the development of our continent. We support very strongly the African demand for the reform of the main instrument of global governance, which is the United Nations, especially of its Security Council. We believe that much of the dysfunctioning of the global system today is a reflection of the dysfunction in the Security Council, where large numbers of people who were not represented in 1945 in San Francisco are still not represented within the confines of the Security Council. And that there is an urgent need to reform that institution so that it can play a more acceptable role in the resolution of international issues. So we've come here to South Africa to extend the hand of friendship and solidarity, and to say we're ready to scale up the relationship. The transformation of the Permanent Commission for Cooperation, which we're now going to scale up into a binational commission headed by the two presidents, is exactly the right kind of signal for our two countries to develop at this time. It will mean that the undertakings that we will make here and in future times will not just be left on the table, because we're going to meet annually. The presidents will have an opportunity to see to what extent the understandings that we've had are being respected. And it becomes a very big tool for accountability and for ensuring progress. So I'm delighted at the opportunity to be here, my delegation. I came here also with my wife, Rebecca, and the South African hospitality, proverbial, very warm, very brotherly. We appreciate it very much. And I'm particularly happy that my period as president of Ghana has coincided with the emergence of President Ramaphosa, Matamela Ramaphosa, as president of South Africa. Mr. President, we're grateful for the invitation We're very, very happy to be here. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. We will take 4 questions from members of the media. We'll take them one by one, two to each president. In that order, if I may invite you to ask your question, sir. Kindly introduce yourself and the media house that you represent.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, Your Excellencies. My name is Nana Kwekwedia from Ghana, TV3, part of the Presidential Press Corps. Mr. President, you mentioned coming together as a continent to forge, to enhance advancement. But one thing which is really derailing advancement of the continent is corruption, which is a key topic you are fighting back home in Ghana. Let me find out how your colleagues, as you met on the 31st, your 31st African Union Summit, the corruption was key on the agenda. How are they fighting corruption? How are they grabbing it? How are they accepting the fight against corruption? And secondly, to Your Excellency, Mr. Ramaphosa, President, please, back home, like I said, our president is fighting corruption. And it's not just fighting corruption in a vacuum, but there's a state prosecutor, an independent state prosecutor. And the interesting aspect is that the independent state prosecutor is somebody in the opposition, the former government, just to clear our minds from nepotism and witch hunting. What lesson are you learning, which I know fighting corruption is also key on your agenda from what he has started? Thank you very much.
We answer?
Yes.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think that the fact that this year the theme of the AU is winning the fight against corruption, the path to Africa's sustainable development, is in itself a very important recognition by the leadership on the continent that this is an issue that we can no longer run away from, and that it is the elephant in the room that we have to address and find a way of containing. I think that in itself is very significant. And the lead figure in promoting this theme is the Nigerian president, Muhammadu Buhari, and you know how committed he has been to the fight against corruption. So that's the first thing. The second, of course, is that individual nations have their own roadmap what we were able to do in workshop was to exchange a lot of information about how in our different countries this matter is being addressed. But it is significant, and I think it highlights the importance of this fight, that the AU itself has taken it as the continental theme. 10 years ago, perhaps it may not have been the case, 20 years ago, but it is the case today, and it is a recognition by the leaders that we have to find acceptable ways of dealing with this. I was able to use the occasion to tell my peers a little bit of how we are going about it in Ghana, and mention specifically the matter that you have addressed to President Ramaphosa. So that would be the way that I will respond. The recognition that it is a fight that has to be won, and that we all have to devise our own ways of being able to address that matter.
Thank you very much. I was really, that's you. I was really heartened. That's not to President Nana Akufo-Addo. That's Nana you. Now, I was truly heartened to see that the leaders of the continent had decided to have as the theme of the conference the precise issue that President Akufo-Addo is talking about, that winning the fight against corruption. That for me was really a defining theme, a theme that resonated with a number of colleagues within the assembly or the summit as a whole. what it really meant is that the hour and the time has now come for African leaders to begin to tackle the elephant in the room, which is corruption, and recognizing that corruption has been impeding the development of our continent. And it has manifested itself through illicit outflows of money out of our countries, and they are counted in the billions and billions of dollars. But it has also manifested itself by getting into the structures of government and forming parasitic networks within structures of ministries, within the structures of state-owned enterprises, and also that the private sector is not immune from corrupt acts itself. And in fact, we also had to recognize the fact that corruption is a two-way process. There's always a corrupter and a corruptee. And quite often the corrupter would be coming from, say, the private sector. So in fighting corruption, we should not lose attention to the two-way corruption that happens. But having said that, the people who fight corruption, that must start from the top. It must be your head of state, head of government, who leads the charge. And we were particularly pleased that President Buhari of Nigeria was given this responsibility. And we're also pleased with the role that he has been playing in Nigeria. And indeed, all of us felt that we need to follow up in his wake. And many of us do precisely what he has been doing. As they say, a fish rots from the head. And therefore, it is the heads of government who must be at the lead in fighting corruption. And thereafter, we must be bold enough to appoint people who are independent, people who have no fear, people who are not prejudiced, people who will not favor anyone in fighting corruption. They should fight corruption without fearing that somebody is going to be calling them up in the middle of the night and saying, why are you doing this? So in the end, those are the types of people that we should have who will fight corruption through and through. And that's precisely what we also want for our own country here in South Africa, that people who are fighters of corruption must not be corrupted themselves, and they must not have any prejudice or fear or favor.
I will take the next question.
President, thank you so much. My name is Tula Sizwe Semelane from ENCA. President Ramaphosa, of the many areas of cooperation that you mentioned, I'm particularly interested in the area of energy. And may I suggest to you that energy costs and energy security, including the cost of fuel, is perhaps one of the threats that you face in terms of the growth that you are seeking. And you are sitting with President Akufo-Addo, and Ghana has, these natural resources, including that. So I'm wondering if you had the occasion to talk about the possibilities of exploring that even further, but also perhaps applying your mind to even proposals that suggest that you should here at home consider freezing or reducing some of our levies and our taxes, which are a big factor of our fuel costs. And President Akufo-Addo, if I may, just a question on, you come to South Africa at a time where we're almost in the middle of what seems to be almost like a referendum on our issues of land. And we are interested to see lessons from other African countries. You are a country that's, over 60 years old in terms of when you gained your independence. Looking at us debating things like land expropriation without compensation, how we, do land restitution. What would you say to us as a country from your own experience as a country? Thank you.
Thank you. I want to less use about these undercovered antiques. We see them. I'll take the last question from the SABC.
I'm Tshepo Iganem from the SABC. Welcome to South Africa, President Addo. My first question relates to the Continental Free Trade Area. experts are saying that countries with a large manufacturing base like South Africa, Kenya, and Egypt stands to benefit in the short term, unlike your country. Did you at all use your engagement with President Ramaphosa to score some kind of concessions in terms of making sure that multinational companies operating there, including those from South Africa, are able to help you scaling up your manufacturing base? And I think I would also like to hear the president, our own president, also maybe responding to this issue of what should be the role of our companies that are established in Africa to help these other countries that are smaller in terms of economic scales to uplift their own economies. Lastly, on migration, there's been a lot of talk about Europe trying to engage African countries, especially in West Africa, about setting up base camps to mitigate the migration to Europe. We have seen President Macron now in Nigeria trying to urge African states, especially those along those migration routes, to set up those bases. Do you think Africa should support that? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, we did speak about energy. We were able to be joined by ministers who deal with energy on both sides. And we were particularly pleased when President Akufo-Addo informed us that Ghana, which, as we all know, is swimming in an ocean of oil, is now going to open up a new block, and they actively invited South Africa to pay an interest in this. And we immediately raised our hands that yes, we are very, very interested in finding ways of participating in the oil exploration and oil exploitation in Ghana. And in this regard, our Minister of Energy, Minister Jeff Radebe, will join his counterpart in trying to see if we can reach agreements on how South Africa can participate. South Africa is, yes, in the unfortunate position in that we import our energy resource, which is oil. So we are in the end subject to the price fluctuations that keep on happening on a dollar exchange basis, as well as the price of oil itself. So in the end, we are price takers. We don't make the price, and we are therefore vulnerable in that regard. And we, as a government, are busy at the moment looking at the impact of these price increases with regard to petrol. And we are actively looking at ways in which we can find some solutions. The solutions are not going to be easy to find. As I said, we are in the end subject to what happens in the international community with the dollar-rand exchange rate, as well as the price of oil. And we feel for our people, and we are going to be trying to find ways in which we can soften this blow and ameliorate this difficulty that our people are facing. And all we can say is that we would like those who may be thinking, particularly retailers and food producers, who might be thinking of increasing prices, to hold back and not increase prices of foodstuffs and other products that people use. This fuel price increase should not automatically lead to the increased living conditions or prices for our people. At the same time, at the government level, we are going to be seeing what ways can be found in order to ameliorate the difficulties that our people are going through at the moment. With regard to the other question, the extent to which South African companies are able to give support to, say, smaller economy countries. Yes, we have a number of our own South African companies in a number of countries on the African continent, but also in West Africa. And we obviously want them to act as good citizens in the countries where they operate, to be as good as they would ordinarily and normally be in our own country, so that in whatever they do, they should seek to promote good labor conditions. They should also adhere to the laws of the country where they are, but they should also be supportive to the developmental agenda of the countries where they operate, where they are able, through their various programs, to lend a hand to help countries improve, and other companies that may be their partners, they should be able to do so. So we urge South African companies not to look at countries where they operate as just resources of making profit, but they should also look at them as areas where they can embark on a developmental agenda and help to develop those economies as well. Thank you.
The series of questions. The land matter. We were very lucky in our history that the period when colonial powers across the continent were seizing the lands of the indigenous people. In Ghana, a group of people got together at the end of the 19th century in an organization called the Aborigines Protection Rights Society. It was led by some of the early nationalists, Mensa Saba, Joseph Kingsley-Hayford, and the others. And as a result of the mobilization that they were able to undertake at the time between the chiefs and the people of our country, we were able to prevent that seizure of lands that took place elsewhere. We were able to prevent it in Ghana. So to that extent, the problem of foreign seizures of indigenous lands has not been an issue with us in Ghana. And we owe it all to those people who over 100 years ago had the foresight to get up and fight and win that fight, so that the Crown Lands Appropriation Bill, which was then proposed by the British imperial power, in the end was withdrawn as a result of the agitation that took place in Ghana. But the problems we have had land is the proper administration, the efficient administration of land in our independent period. And we're grappling with it and trying to find solutions that would allow us to enhance the security of title of people to land. But the problem that there has been in Southern and Eastern Africa as a result of the intervention of the Aborigines Protection Rights Society in Ghana did not become a Ghanaian phenomenon. They also say that the mosquito helped us because it was it was decimating them in the hundreds. So the idea of taking up permanent residence in Ghana became something fraught with a lot of danger for many of the colonial people. But this is it. But so we have different sets of problems, equally important for the development of our country, but not that. As far as energy is concerned, the issues you have here, the levies and all of that, which are part of the prices, is a continental-wide problem. We have the problem in Ghana as well. How? Where we have done one or two things that have been important. First of all, rationalized the growth of the energy sector by making sure that many of the agreements that were signed in the past, which were particularly onerous, we've been able to put them aside. And that process of rationalization has meant a more secure supply of power and electricity. I think you yourself will be witnesses of it, the famous Dumsor, which was a major feature of our lives the last 5 years, is no longer a feature of our life in Ghana. We've even been able, despite all of these increases of crude oil prices in the world, to actually bring down electricity costs in Ghana. We're taking the risk. It's a judgment considered that bringing down the cost of power will help stimulate economic activity in Ghana, and that in itself will then provide us with the funds to be able to deal with higher crude oil prices, and also embarking on a very ambitious program of further exploration. That is what I was telling President Ramaphosa and the members of his government and the Energy Minister, the Honorable Radebe, that we're about to undergo a second round, a new round of licensing for oil concessions in the country. We're very interested in inviting South Africans to participate in that exercise. We know of the expertise of companies like Sasol, etc., what they can do, they can bring to us. So the manufacturing, yes, initially there's going to be an advantage for the countries that have strong manufacturing bases. But at the end of the day, all of us in Africa, small or big, we have to learn that we can only pay our way in the world by the things we make. We can no longer depend on our raw material exports as a basis of sustaining our economies. That period in Africa's history is over. We have to live on the basis of the things that we make. And I think that if that recognition goes around the continent, I don't see why we cannot duplicate the example of Europe. 70% of the collective GDP of the members of the European Union is derived from intra-European trade. The figures for Africa are the exact opposite. 10, 11, 12, 13% is what constitutes the collective share of Africa's GDP from intra-African trade. And that tells you everything. And in Europe, you have big economies, Germany, France, and until recently, Britain, living side by side with the Belgians and the Hollands and the Austrias and the small countries of Eastern and Central Europe. And you have seen a greater increase in prosperity across Europe than there was 20 or 30 years ago. I'm anticipating the same thing will happen. Yes, South Africa, Kenya, the countries with the strong will in the initial stages have an advantage. But recognizing that the continental free trade area is enlarging the possibilities of us trading with ourselves, I think that the market will drive all of our countries, big and small, to get involved with devising where we have the comparative advantage. There will be some who will be very strong with cottage industries, producing cultural artifacts, and that becomes their way of sustaining themselves. Others giving value to their mineral resources and enhancing, for instance, in Ghana, our bauxite and our iron ore resources. These becomes the way of all of us of entering this larger market. But I think it is extremely important that the continental free trade area becomes a reality. It gives our scientists, our technicians, the opportunities also now to be creative, to find ways of meeting the demands of this continental free trade area. So the migrant issues, I'm not so sure about migrant bases and collectives in various parts of the day. My view is that we should concentrate on growing our economies on the continent. The Europeans are really concerned about this. They should get involved in investing in our economies to be able to grow our economies so that our young men will stay at home. But the idea of bases and herding people into camps and everything, I haven't seen in close detail the proposals that President Macron made in Lagos, but instinctively I have big problems with it. And I think all of us will probably in detail find it a difficult thing to go. They're making all these efforts to stop our people going across. Well, they are in charge of their countries. They can take that. But as for us here, the idea of caging people or confining people to camps who want to go, I don't really see that is the way forward. Let us quickly get on with the course of economic development. And I think that when it takes hold, our young people will find the motive to stay and contribute their bit to the growth of the continent.
Good. Let me just say on this notion of creating bases, I mean, it's akin to creating prisons for the people of our continent, and I really don't see how African leaders can accede to that create prisons for your people so that they don't have freedom of movement. We have just agreed, and we're leading towards signing an agreement on the freedom of movement of people, So let the people move freely. And what they should do as more developed economies of the world is to do precisely what President Akufo-Addo says. Let them invest in African economies so that in the end there is broad-based economic development and growth. And that in a way will help ameliorate and solve many of the problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have a request just for one handshake.
With pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Nothing we should not say.